Welcome to Authors at Drucker. I'm Dave Specht, Senior Fellow at the Drucker School of Management. At the Drucker School, we aspire to become the global meeting place for the world's most influential business-owning families. This conversation today represents our progress towards achieving that objective. Authors at Drucker is an interview series where we feature top authors that write about issues impacting business-owning families. Authors at Drucker is made possible from the generous sponsorship from the James E. Hughes Jr. Foundation. The foundation is dedicated to advancing the study of family governance and generational well-being. We at the Drucker School feel very aligned and very grateful to Jay Hughes and his foundation. On the last Authors at Drucker, we featured John Langston, founder of Republic Capital Group, an industry-leading wealth and asset management investment banking firm. We talked about his book, 24% More. If you missed that interview, please check out our YouTube channel for the replay. Today I'm joined by Andrew Taylor. Andrew's an old friend of mine from our days in Uruguay, where we served as missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Andrew's the founder of Octagon Mentoring. He's led adventure retreats in Costa Rica since 2004, transitioned back to Salt Lake City about 6 years ago. He's the author of a book called Launch, a guide to getting unstuck, navigating life, and thriving. Andrew, this is a book that I needed right now, so I appreciate you writing it. I know you maybe didn't write it for me, but I needed it, so thanks for joining me.
So happy to hear that, Dave. Good to be here with you, man.
So I want to go to the very end of the book because you get vulnerable. I mean, you're vulnerable throughout the whole thing, and I appreciate it because as a reader, it helps me feel like you're a real guy and you're living a real life like the rest of us out here. And sometimes when we hold authors up on pedestals and we think, well, maybe they don't have the same experience as we do, but at the very end of the book, you talk about discomfort, and if you could talk to your 30-year-old self that you wouldn't clue him in on that things would be okay. Why is there so much growth in discomfort? We're going right into the deep end on this deal.
I love it, man. It's a great start. Discomfort and struggle is what leads to action. I don't like where I'm at. I'm uncomfortable. I don't like my circumstances or whatever it may be. Once that gets uncomfortable enough, I will act or a person will act and just say, I don't like feeling this way anymore. Something needs to change. And I think that it's sitting in that discomfort, feeling it, experiencing it, not being rescued from it.
Yeah. That
gets us further down the road. I hate discomfort, especially in that last chapter of that book where I was, and I mentioned I'm very lucky and fortunate if that's my rock bottom, and it felt like one of them in my life. At the same time, it was my rock bottom of just being unemployed, being recently unengaged, and I had been divorced and recently unengaged. The recession had just hit. All these dreams and passions that I'd been pursuing were just like crashing. And there I am sitting on a bed getting ready to, wearing a full suit, go and interview for this job that I was lucky to get an interview for, but not a job I was like seeking out or wanted. It was really just, hey, this is all I've got right now. And all of that struggle and discouragement, depression, all of those moments led to a surrender that I'm not good at and an acceptance of, well, this is just what it is right now. And that led me to making the next steps, even the ones that I didn't want to make. And I'm still struggling with this, Dave, 15 years later as a, middle-aged man now that we are. God, it sounds weird to say, but, still struggling with this surrender to even God, the universe, life in that, things don't always go as we want. But every time this happens to me or I'm struggling with something or life takes a turn or a curveball, something better comes eventually. And so that suffering leads to something if I can, and this is my challenge, is accept and allow the space for the discomfort to then lead to other things.
Yeah. I think one of the big challenges with very successful business owners and their children is that it feels like there is always an option to swoop in and save, whether it's from a bad financial decision a child makes or a bad life choice or whatever. And it feels like, I mean, I have 6 kids. I don't like to watch them go through really tough stuff. So in that discomfort, and I get it. Like, I know that's where the growth is, but as a parent, it's so tempting to try to shortcut the discomfort for our children. Do you have any thoughts on that? How as a parent to be able to pump the brakes and say, I'm here for you, but I'm going to let you learn. I'm not going to rob you of the opportunity to live through your choices. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's especially hard when you have the resources, the money, usually, or the time, and that's another resource, or the network to be able to help and rescue, save, fix, whatever it may be. I believe it is ingrained in our DNA to want to take care of our offspring, to help them along. And so we're living unprecedented times, and the resources and comforts that we can offer, we never could historically. And so this wasn't an intentional thing for our ancestors, as far as I can tell. Life was just gritty and struggly, and like it just was a natural part of the process. Now that we've hit some technologies and privileges, if you will, as a society, now it has to be a conscious choice. Yeah. And I think just recognizing that it has to be a conscious choice, recognizing that you have everything in your ability to fix and rescue and save and comfort, that you have to have the self-discipline to not. And I think there's a big difference between rescuing and supporting.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I think to be aware of. Like, absolutely give your child support. Absolutely try to provide opportunities. Also, just you have to be very disciplined to be consciously aware of, like, giving them the space to struggle. And I think if you can, you'll find that happy medium.
Well, and I think it goes back to this question of, how do you say no to your kids when yes is always an option? You're walking through the grocery store. When we were newlyweds, my wife and I, we didn't have anything, nothing. So no was pretty easy, for that little kid that says, can I have that? Can I have this? Can I have that? And it was, no, we can't afford that. Well, what do you say when yes is an option? It seems more difficult.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I'm doing. In 15 years, I'll tell you if it worked. And I'm taking the approach of teaching them words and language that are relevant to the no. So no, I can't just buy you everything. Why not, Dad? 6-year-old brain is like,
yeah.
Why not? I want it. You should. You can. Like this makes sense. And so I've started teaching them the words like spoiled and entitled. I've taught them those words, not saying you are, but saying, if I buy you everything you want, then you'll be spoiled and entitled. Well, what does that mean, Dad? Well, good question. So we've actually had conversations with our kids about what the word spoiled means and what it means to be entitled. And we have conversations about delayed gratification. And these are big words for a 6-year-old. Don't get me wrong. It's not like my kids are like, oh yeah, Dad, I get it. But I'm actually trying to experiment with ways to help them understand. And so my kids do understand the word spoiled. And we do this with the TV as well. Like, why can't I just watch endless TV? Why can't I have, sugar bombs and Pop-Tarts for breakfast? And, the answers are, hey, if I buy you everything you want all the time, then your brain, your little young brain that's learning about the world is going to think that everyone's going to do that for you forever. And I do get to frame it a little bit with my work and be like, hey, like when you're 21 and someone tells you no, or you can't afford it and you're on your own, you're going to have a really hard time. So I'm trying to set you up for success.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't become about can I or can't I? It becomes about what am I doing as a dad to help you become a great young adult. Yeah. And I think if you start it sounds like it's too much for a little kid, and in some ways it is, but in a lot of ways it's not. And I think that's where you have to get creative. TV. Like, why do we have to turn off the TV? And like the short answer is because it will melt your brain, and it'll rot your brain. And my kids are like, Dad, that's dumb. That's not true. You're like, you're right. Let me teach you about dopamine, which you're like, why would you teach a 6-year-old about dopamine? My kids understand dopamine. Doesn't mean they're always happy, but I turn off the TV and they're like, why can't we do more? And it's like, hey guys, remember we talked about dopamine and like it spikes and then nothing's fun and like you get angry and they're like, oh yeah, dopamine. And like, they do understand these concepts. And so I would challenge parents out there to start talking about concepts around entitlement, being spoiled, sugar crash, dopamine flushes and things like that. And if you're having a hard time, finding creative ways, call me. Like that's like, I get a kick out of this stuff.
Yeah, I have my own opinion on entitlement, and I want to test it on you. I believe that entitlement begins with you and I, not with our kids. I think that we make decisions as parents because we feel entitled to do what we want to do for our kids because we can. I don't think that any child is born entitled. I think we train them to be entitled. Am I off on that? What do you think?
I agree with we're entitled as parents. Like when I'm talking entitlement, and I talk about it a lot, and it's a word we kind of shy away from, and it's a word we throw at wealthy people, which is super unfair because everyone's entitled.
Sure.
I've seen people in poverty extremely entitled. I've seen people in middle class extremely entitled, foreign countries. We all struggle with, I want the world to work for me in the way I want it, and I want it now. Yeah. And so it's hard for me to be judgmental of my kids or another human because I have my own entitlements. And so, yes, we are entitled as we're parenting and raising these little beings, and I think it's sort of a natural. It's just a natural thing. Like laziness is embedded in our DNA as well. As our ancestors had to like take advantage of comfort to rest so that they had the energy to go get resources when they needed it, hunt, gather, whatever it may be. That's ingrained in us. Yeah. And so that we are entitled and lazy in this day and age where it's much, much easier to be so, it doesn't surprise me that we've got, as a society, as a world society, we're struggling with laziness. I mean, I don't want to, throw stones, obesity, whatever it may be. This desire to not act if we don't have to. That's going to be a real struggle, especially with AI, and as we get more and more technologies that just do things for us, which I'm very excited about. But it is going to be a mental health or a personal development challenge for all of us.
Yeah, Andrew, a big part of your life has been about adventure. You led a company that was focused on creating experiences surrounded by adventure. And as you think about the development of young people and middle-aged people like you and I, why does adventure matter?
There's so many elements of adventure that address what we're talking about. Entitlement, for example. Mother Nature is not for us or against us. She will rain on us on our wedding day. She doesn't care. And so when we live in this world where we can, especially now, fabricate or manufacture the right conditions, Mother Nature's there to be like, I'm in charge. And like, I don't care about your plans. And so I do think there's this natural, just this natural equalizer in terms of like us accepting the fact that we're not the center of the universe and we're not in charge of everything that we get from Mother Nature. 1, 2, sights, sounds, smells, being in nature, disconnected from technology, screens, is healing. It is good medicine for our nervous systems. And our nervous systems in this day and age are in a totally whacked out, disequilibrium right now. So that's number 2. Number 3, being uncomfortable and being in situations where you have to make things happen. And, challenging our bodies, learning new things, standing up on a surfboard. You watch surfing on TV, you're like, that looks easy. You step into the water with a surfboard and get your butt kicked for 20 minutes and you're cooked. And you're like, that was really hard. And then there's a lot of somatic therapy that comes from just having to balance and walk on an uneven surface. There's things that are happening in our brain that are good for us, our bodies, our nervous systems, our brain, and our chemicals that are regulating. And I don't think we've hit the tip of the iceberg. And so, and it's fun, usually fun for most people or a lot of the population. It's a fun way to get healthy. And when you're talking about a therapeutic setting or a coaching setting where it's like, we're going to sit and talk about some important things, which has a lot of value and benefit. If you can do that on a surfboard and watch the sunset, you just took that session, let's say, or that conversation, and you made it a core memory that is so much more powerful when it comes to changing a life.
Well, I'm going to take us back to where we met. So we met in Uruguay, and I feel like there was a brotherhood developed there because of shared suffering. Now, we didn't choose to serve missions for the purpose of suffering. We chose because we wanted to try to help people. But can you talk about that? I feel like there is something in shared suffering that develops like a bond, a brotherhood, a connection. As you're leading these, adventures with some people that know each other and other people that are perfect strangers, what is there for us to learn about kind of that shared suffering or shared experience where Mother Nature can be pretty rough?
There's the chemical oxytocin, which is released, and that is the bonding chemical. And, all of these experiences, when they're done together in community, face-to-face community with another individual, there is a bond that can be built there, a really powerful one. And, you look at our missionary experience, and it was such a profound rite of passage that is harder to come by in this day and age. And, there we were trying our best to do good, serve, follow the convictions of our beliefs and inviting people to do the same. And very quickly I was met with the harsh realities of the world. Doors get slammed in your face, rocks get thrown at you. And the people of Uruguay the vast majority were just loving, beautiful people. But, knocking doors and talking about Jesus isn't always the most well-received setting for anybody. And so, I think that I'm very proud of that time of my life. I'm very, the friendships that we made, the hard things we went through together. And at such a pivotal age, I will shout from the rooftops, just a profound experience that is. And as hard as it was, we were very lucky that we got that experience. It shaped my life so profoundly. Even if you set aside the religious aspect of it, just the experience of itself, in and of itself. And where do you get that now?
Yeah, that was where I was going next, was like, how do you manufacture an experience like that? It's really hard to do. It's like manufacturing scarcity. Like, I mean, if you have financial capital, pretending that you don't have financial capital feels pretty hollow and fake, and not putting yourself in hard situations, but wanting the same type of growth and experience and profound wisdom that comes, like, it's just not, there's a disconnect. So we almost need to seek out these opportunities to push ourselves outside of our comfort zones. And it's not natural. It's not natural. I think we're just comfort-seeking beings.
Yeah. It goes back to the hunter-gatherer days. I mean, we had to reserve resources by default. And so how do you manufacture? And that is, I mean, even my adventure therapy program in Costa Rica is a manufactured experience.
Yeah.
And that can be challenging. And I think you just call it what it is. I do think, especially with teenagers, let's say, you got a teenager that's, not for whatever reason, they're needing this experience, and you manufacture it, and they're like, this is fake. And it's like, you try to get it as natural as you can, which is why I like the outdoors and adventure. I think making it as fun as you can. And listen, we had fun on our missions too. It wasn't there was a lot of purpose and meaning and fun. We were learning languages. We were experiencing the world, walking the streets, sitting and interacting in the world in a way that we never have since and never would before. And there was something fun to that adventure. I loved the adventure of it, even though it was challenging and difficult. And so I think that, I think naming that, is you're trying to, for a lot of people of high net worth, a lot of resources or privilege that can provide a lot, just naming it, like we are choosing discomfort. I went on a humanitarian trip 15 years ago over the holidays. There were 3 high net worth families on that trip, wonderful people, wonderful children. And we were sleeping on dirt floors. We were shoveling dirt 15 hours a day. It was It was a grind, and it was beautiful. These families had a wonderful experience. So you can pay for that. And I think you sit down with your kids and say, here's why we're doing this. Yeah. We are choosing discomfort. We are choosing to serve another community because of our situation. This is an important life skill we need to be intentional about as a family, because guess what? We live in privilege and comfort, and we need to intentionally decide on discomfort and continue to try and embrace that, even though we don't have to.
Yeah.
And I think you make that a teaching thing in a family culture.
Yeah. So Andrew, many of our listeners are parents, and one of their top worries is not about the money and how to accumulate more of it. It's about their children and their children's relationship with money. In your experience, why is it that money can sometimes be an inhibitor to growth and ambition versus being a catalyst for growth and ambition?
You taught me this years ago when I had you on my podcast, and I've never forgotten it. I use it all the time, and that is that money is a magnifier. Mm-hmm. It can magnify flaws. It magnifies our flaws and our dysfunctions. It also magnifies our goodness. And so in a family situation, like any individual growing up in the world needs to struggle to develop and create confidence and self-esteem and skills that come from struggle to be like, oh, I can do and function. I can work a job. I can budget my money. I can pay my rent. I can, make my food and manage that and maintain relationships. Those are those basic functions. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs of, the physiological needs of, food and shelter. Most people in society, or at least in U.S. culture, can check that box on some level. Then you have safety. Hopefully, I hope a lot of people can check that box. And then you get up to like self-esteem. And then you get up to the top, which is self-actualization. Now, if you're a kid growing up in a setting where all those needs are met, thankfully and hopefully, but then you start to become even more aware that, hey, especially if they're aware of an inheritance or a trust. And I have seen that, for some kids to be, where does the urgency come from? Where does the sense of I've got to do this for myself, this natural process of I need to learn skills to be able to provide basic needs. Yeah. If you cut that out or in some way shortcut that, I do see developmentally it can be difficult. And this isn't a judgment of character, by the way.
Sure. Yeah.
And every kid's different too. There are some kids that are just going to be born ambitious, mm-hmm. and it won't matter. You could say, hey, you're going to inherit X amount of dollars at 21, and they'd be like, I'm still going to be a go-getter in all these ways. There are also going to be kids that are, whether they do it consciously or subconsciously, are going to say, oh, all these boxes are checked. And then this is the hard part, Dave, and that is, well, what do I provide? Yeah. There's this paradigm in cognitive psych. Who am I? What do I provide? There's this concept of mattering. that I've come across recently, and mattering is kind of like a psychological paradigm. And you'll notice this is that, you know, when we started growing up, and maybe the generation right behind us, millennials, that there's been this strong message of like, you matter, you're important, you're special, trophies for everybody. I'm not critical of it. It is what it is, whatever. I don't care. We could go off on that. We don't need to. But you just matter because you are. And what we've realized is that's half of the equation. And mattering isn't just that. The other half of mattering is this sense that I provide value.
Yeah.
I bring to a scenario my friend group. I bring funny jokes, and that's why people like me. My family. I mow the lawn. I contribute in a way that if I were gone tomorrow, people would be like, something's missing. That's the part that we're missing right now, is that I bring value. Now, if you're born into a home that doesn't have a lot of resources, chances are naturally you're going to matter very quickly, whether it's doing chores around the house, getting a job at a young age and helping the family make rent. Yeah. You matter very quickly at a very young age. It's unpleasant, you know, that's not an ideal situation, but if you're born into, you know, considerable wealth, how do you matter? That to me is like, star that 3 times. That scenario is, and it's hard to manufacture that. I think we can, but you got to be intentional about how do you provide your children with a sense of mattering, and even in ways that they may not like. Chores. I'm big on chores. And as a dad of 6-year-olds and a 3-year-old, twin 6-year-olds and a 3-year-old, my mom grew up on a dairy farm. And so I grew up with massive to-do lists every morning as that trickled down. And so for me, chores are huge. And every time I'm like, hey, chores, it's freaking chaos, just meltdowns. And my wife and I have made a conscious decision that is a fight we will have every day of raising our children, because we believe in it. And yeah, granted, it's not every day. There's days where like, mom and dad got the dishes. Like, don't worry about it, guys. Like, we're having a whatever. But I think that those are the things that are uncomfortable as a parent. Those are the battles you have to fight. Yeah. And no matter what your resources are, those are the battles you have to be like, this matters so that my 6-year-old becomes a functional 23-year-old. Yeah. And it is uncomfortable, and it is work, and it is easy as a parent. And this is where we have to check our own privilege and entitlement to be like, oh, we can just pay the cleaning person. We don't have to fight these battles. Let's go. I want to go throw a football with my son. I want to go play dolls with my daughter. I don't want to fight a battle over the dishwasher. But the unique perspective that I get from my career is that dishwasher is the thing. And we're going to play dolls, and we're going to throw the football, and we're going to ride bikes. We're going to do it all, but it's exhausting, and there are days I don't want to do any of it.
Sure. Yeah. So the book has kind of this framework that you call the Octagon Life. I'd like to dive into a few of these, what you call mirrors. And maybe let's start with the mindset mirror. First of all, what is the mindset mirror? What can we learn from that?
When I was in my late 20s, I discovered this idea, it's actually a therapy, but it's also a philosophy. But that is that we get to decide how we frame the world, and that we get to have choice in not always in what happens to us, but how we decide to interpret that. And it came at a crucial time, at a time of post-divorce, where I was reflecting on like, why did I get into a failed relationship, and what was my part in that, and the stories that I was telling myself. That was a pivotal changing moment of my life. And a lot of what inspired my book were these moments in my life where I was like, wow, like why wasn't I taught that sooner? Why wasn't I taught that at a younger age? And I'm not throwing stones. I grew up in a beautiful community with a ton of support, wonderful family, like very lucky. But just they're like, oh, wow, this could have been really helpful at a younger age had I been receptive and open to it. And so one of those big things is the story we tell ourselves. You know, we go through life living by default in so many ways around examples I use are like how we see money or how we see relationships or how we see work or how we see things. Of like, we tell ourselves stories and we can change those stories. And by changing those stories that we tell ourselves, we can change how we feel, how we act, the choices we make, our behaviors, and take part in creating a more positive world for ourselves.
Yeah, I love the idea that we can rewrite our own stories based on our mindset and how we look at these things. I look at all the things that I've tried to chase down in my life that I've come up short on, and those can either really bum me out or they can really inspire me to say, why didn't I just quit on life after that one? And I love that, and I hope that my kids can pick up on that early, because like, if happiness is a choice, that's a mind-blowing thing. And I feel like it is. Like, we can choose the story that you talk about kind of later in the book about the purpose mirror and the farmer, could be good, could be bad story. That story of,
yes, who knows? Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. Yeah, could be good, could be bad. But it seems like some people are just born with a lot more optimism, and others, kind of naturally have a cloud follow them. And I don't know, is it as simple as teaching that it is a choice? How do we do it?
So the research through positive psychology, and this has been challenged a little bit, so I don't want to claim expertise on this, but there is a baseline of positivity, well-being, happiness. Some people are born with a higher baseline. And that is a truth. And there's a lot of suggestions that that's about 50% of the impact of our overall just happiness in life, is that there's a genetic baseline. We know this. I even see it in my kids.
Yeah.
Some of my kids run a little more intense, a little more heavy. I do too. Our youngest is just like sunshine and monster trucks, and like, my wife can be that way for sure as well, which is like, I'm so jealous, and so, yeah, I do think we need to just acknowledge a harsh reality. And I've met a lot of people that are like, hey, I trend heavy. I'm like, I got you. I get it. I fluctuate heavy to light, and there's lessons and goodness that comes from all of it. But the other half of that equation is how we want to choose to live our lives, the habits, the beliefs, the mindsets that we strive to adopt to help us. And Dave, I think that the heavier side of myself and my personality, which a lot of people don't always see or know, mental health struggles, depression and anxiety, and in those harsh realities that I've struggled with in my own life, that's why I wrote this book. Because I have to go to the gym. I have to be really work hard at my thought process, because I can go heavy and dark if I'm not careful.
Yeah.
And that's what inspires me and is inspiring my work. People are like, what inspired this for you? It's like my own journey of, I've got to write down in my journal 5 things I'm grateful for. I got to sweat and go to the gym. I got to meditate. I got to, I've got to be thoughtful of the thoughts that I'm entertaining for my own well-being.
Yeah.
Not everybody lives that way. And I'm grateful for the people that don't have to live that way. And I'm very thoughtful of the people that do. And I'm lucky. And I work with a lot of young people. And that's been the inspiration of my entire career, is how do I put people who struggle, genetically or otherwise, maybe they've been handed a trauma in life that sets them on a path of more heaviness and struggle. But what are some things I can give the world and give that person and give those people? And I describe it in my book. I'll take every advantage I can get. If jumping in a cold plunge in the morning, which I do sometimes, gets me a better dopamine day, I'm in. I'll do it. And if you've struggled and suffered, you know why.
So the next thing I wanted to visit with you about is you talk about a process mirror, I really think it's interesting, this kind of argument between motivation and willpower. Benjamin Hardy wrote a book called Willpower Doesn't Work,
Mm-hmm.
and how there is some sort of like a letting go of just white knuckling life, but talk to me about the differences between motivation and willpower from your perspective.
It's interesting because as I was researching my book, this was one of those things that came out of the book, or when I was writing it and just kind of like exploring my ideas, it really became clear to me the distinction between motivation and willpower. And I think so many of us describe our lack of willpower as lack of motivation. Now, I use the example in the book of I get young people, 20-year-old calls me on the phone and says, hey, I really lack motivation. That's why I need your program. And but I want to do better in school. I want better relationships. I want to be healthier in every way aspect of my life. Well, that's motivation. I would describe that as motivation. So to me, that's not a lack of motivation. It's I actually want healthy things. What's lacking is willpower, which is the execution part. And that distinction was really important for me in the book because I think that that's the harder part. And if we can define those two and say, hey, wanting all of these things is albeit low motivation, it is motivation. And that is a sign, in my opinion, of healthiness and stability, is that I want good things. And then what we can do is start working on the willpower side, which is the willpower side, and this is the mistake so many of us make, and that is that I don't feel like doing it. Mm-hmm. And so I don't do it. It's natural in all of us, but if we can recognize what's happening in that moment and do it anyway, I mean, that's how I wrote my book, Dave. I'm not a natural writer. I don't enjoy the writing process. I wanted a book though. I was motivated to have a book. And then what I recognized I finally just had to do was to say, I don't feel like doing this at all, but I will do it anyway. I exercised that willpower. And there is a big discussion out there right now of exercising willpower. Does that increase that willpower muscle or does it decrease it? And from all my research, I see that, I see that it really just depends on how you look at it. That we don't have a firm answer on that. And there are a lot of smart people who take different sides of that conversation, way smarter than me.
Well, I like to think of it as commitment. What am I committed to? And based on my actions, I need to draw my own conclusions as to what I'm actually committed to. And that is a really brutal exercise to go through because sometimes I'm committed to just comfort and zoning out. Like that's what I've committed to. Like according to how I spent my time today, I'm telling you that I'm committed to. And sometimes it takes that level of kind of brutal honesty with myself to say, okay, what do I want? What do I really want to be committed to? And then how am I going to allocate my time, my attention, my resources to show up in that way? And oftentimes I need to make changes. But the words matter for sure. And just like hoping for change, it doesn't bring it. It doesn't bring it.
Yeah.
What am I committed to?
I like that. I like that. That's a powerful word, commitment, right? And like if we make healthy commitments and we execute on them, that's why I like coaching and mentoring. And like I'm a big believer in therapy as well. But as a non-therapist, coach, mentor, whatever you want to call me, I love that I get the benefit of working with young people and saying, I say it facetiously, but like, I don't care how you feel today. Obviously with rapport and relationship, I don't mean it. I do care, but like we have stuff to do. You have commitments you've made that you want to execute on, be it going and getting that job, be it, being more social, be it, fitness or whatever it may be. These are commitments you've made that will help your feelings.
Yeah.
And it's just a different approach. And I think that, for a lot of the young people we work with, a lot of them have a good therapist. And that's why I can say it that way and be like, hey, and let's talk about your feelings too, but you came to execute. I will help you execute. That's what the whole point of my book is like let that process mirror, especially is executing, making a plan to execute, even when we're not feeling that way. And I think by default, so many of us don't act because we don't feel like acting. And if you can bypass that or understand that, be self-aware within that, I think you'll get more where you want to be in life.
Well, and I think it connects directly with your purpose mirror. You know, if you're clear on your purpose and your why, like for what you're chasing, whether it's great relationships with your wife or your children or a relationship with God, like if your purpose is clear enough, then it will help you navigate when you don't feel motivated, you know, and can push you through or pull you through. I don't know how that is, pushing or pulling, but get you through to continue to make decisions when you don't feel it. But when you've decided, look, this is the purpose. It's bigger than my feelings today, and here we go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and to your point, so much of what that octagon metaphor that I use in my book, everything's related.
Yeah.
To your point, that process mirror bounces off the purpose mirror, which bounces off our relationship mirror, which bounces off our mindset mirror and our career. And that there is this messiness to life of interaction of what I'll call good decisions or effort in certain areas of life that sort of lift all the boats. And that's hard to remember. That's hard. It's so easy to neglect or just say certain things don't matter as much, and everything can't matter all the time at the same way. But to your point, I think you're right. That was a really good point, and that is that just these things impact each other in a really meaningful way.
One of the things that I think impacts happiness as well is what we assume our life is supposed to be. I feel like that is such a hard thing because our brain doesn't do good with having gaps in it, and so we fill it in with, well, at 47 I thought this was where I thought I'd have a lot more figured out, or this is how it should be, or this is where I should be in my life or my financial progress or whatever. And it's rough. Any thoughts on that?
I've thought about this a lot lately. And Dave, statistically speaking, you and I are at one of the most unhappy phases of our lives, which whew.
It's not that bad.
Yeah. And listen, like, you know, you and I aren't victims of society. We don't have we're fortunate in the card we've been dealt, and that's life, and that's a conversation for another day. But we are at this phase of life where we're saying, is this it? And is this what I've got to show? Is this I'm lacking or not performing in all these ways that I thought I would have figured out? And there's a lot of data suggesting that that's why this is a hard phase of life for a mid to late 40s male. Mm. And that at about 50 we'll start to bounce back. And I wonder if that's just going to be due to acceptance, more maturity and wisdom, or just pure exhaustion of like, I give up. And
the ego finally melt.
The ego, we put our egos down and be like, whatever, you know. But I'm feeling that struggle so real right now in my life, and that's not to say I don't have a lot to be grateful for, but I do find that I'm in one of the more, you know, difficult phases of my life from a mental health standpoint, and just well-being or happiness and whatever words you want to put around it. And I have awesome kids and an amazing life and so much to be grateful for, but that can be hard to, you know, it's just a challenge, man. And it's those same awesome kids that I love so much that I, like, on the opposite end, put so much pressure on myself to provide, teach, be there, and we're just in it. We're in it full throttle.
Yeah. I just think we need to be more kind to ourselves on the whole measuring of progress. I think we need to ambitiously pursue things, but I also think we need to cut ourselves some slack.
How do you do that? How do you do that? And mean, because when I start to, you're right, and you're 1,000% right. But then this little voice in my head's like, but you need that edge of ambition, like it's this push and pull. How do you balance that with ambition? And I've finally accepted that my ambition isn't going away, even though there's days where I'm like, I wish I could. I'm grateful for it, and I also it's
yeah,
it's a yin yang.
We'll see if this is connected. I've been wrestling with these two words, faithful and faith-filled, and I feel like faithful is like doing the right thing and just keep trying to do the right thing. Faith-filled feels different for me. Faith-filled is like doing the right things because of this big purpose that I believe in, and I'm kind of in it with energy rather than just faithful. I want to be faithful, like I want to do the right things, but I want to be faith-filled so that my energy in doing those things, whether it's how I worship or how I take care of my family, like I want to do it with the right energy. And I don't know, am I wacky on that? Faithful versus faith-filled? I mean, I'd love any input you have.
I like that distinction. That's pretty cool. And the faithful part really resonates with me. I'm less religious than I used to be, and I think that for a time it's not that I abandoned spirituality, but I think I neglected spirituality, and I do find that, to your point, like we're at this phase in life where like things aren't always how I wanted them to be. Things aren't. I want more control. I want more freedom. I want more of everything, and that ain't always going to happen. Yeah. It doesn't, like, it's entitlement, man. I'm a 5-year-old. I want my candy. I want my TV. I want it on my terms and the way I want it.
What do you call body back?
Yeah, and God or the universe and whatever is like, tough beans, Andrew. You're not special. And I'm like, no, I want to be special. And then we look around and we go, but Dave Specht is special, and he's got it all, and so-and-so is special, and they have it all. And of course we scroll, and it's like all these people are special, and like I'm not special. And to your point, that faithful part is me coming back to a spirituality and a belief that God, whatever you want to call it, higher power, has always helped me in taking care of me. Not that I haven't had to suffer, but that I have been miraculously helped at times in my life for no good reason. And I think that's what I keep trying to get back to, and that I continue to be supported in ways that are not explainable by the like mathematic equation of like, well, I just worked really hard and got what I wanted, and so there's that faithful part for me is just continuing to try to have the humility to recognize that I'm not in charge. Something else is bigger than me, and it cares about me.
Yeah.
Faith-filled, I like that, because when that part that faithful part's in balance, then I get this other drive, which ebbs and flows, and that is like I believe in something, I believe I can uniquely contribute to it, and therefore I'm committed to it. And I think a lot of what came out of my book and my career over the last 15 years has been that belief in that I can make a difference. I have a unique set of skills and strengths and things I've been blessed with, for lack of a better word, that I can bring good to the world in a way that can bring good to the world and provide a life of security for my family.
Here's the bottom line. If your life was different you wouldn't be able to offer what you have to offer. I mean, that's the beauty of it. Like, you wouldn't be in the position to provide empathy to these young people. You wouldn't be able to extend, what you have to someone that's been divorced or whatever. Like, all of our life experiences, and particularly the painful ones, are the ones that give us assets to share, And if our life was just a straight path towards bliss, like, what experiences could we have that would be helpful to someone else? So I think it's beautiful the way that, we learn and we grow, and maybe it is the hard times that we've gone through that aren't even for us, they're for someone else. Maybe they're for our kids so that they don't have to suffer some of the same things that we've suffered or whatever. Like, I think it's all for the toolbox. And I think what you've done in your book is you've gathered up a bunch of tools. This is your toolbox, and by the way, it's helpful to a lot of other people. And I think it is all about that, is accessing those tools so that we can continue to move forward with courage and with energy, and not just accept that, life is hard. I mean, it is that life is hard. It is accepting that, but it's like, yeah, it is, and I'm in it. Like, bring it on. I'm here for it.
Yeah, like there's that quote, dance in the rain, and and that's you're so right. And struggle and difficulty bring depth, and depth brings connection, and
it makes you interesting. Like, struggle makes you interesting. It makes you relatable.
I don't want to be interesting, Dave. Sometimes I don't want to, when I'm in it. I don't want it. I want bliss. I want that.
Yeah.
I want to float along and just sort of enjoy, and yet that's the beauty of it all, right? That's it's funny. It's really nice to like connect with you in this way, in just that way, because you're right. I do. We put people around us on these pedestals, and we're often wrong.
Well, I think the only people we put on pedestals are people that we don't know well enough. Mm-hmm. Like, you think that what you see on my social media makes you feel like you want my life, means you don't know my life. Mm-hmm. Because if you really know someone, they have real struggles. Mm-hmm. Everyone.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what's so dangerous about social media and comparing ourselves to others and measuring our life against others. It's like, well, we don't know them well enough, so just stop.
Yeah, and I have a question for you, and maybe that is so like you mentioned in the beginning about like you felt my book was vulnerable, and I really appreciate that, because I've read a lot of self-help, personal development, whatever you want to call it. I've read a lot of those books and have gotten a lot of benefit from them. So I am that cheesy guy that's like, I want books that are gonna like, I have immersed myself in that, and it's been a huge net positive for my life. I really, strove to write a book that wasn't like this rah-rah, do these 5 things and you will guaranteed success. And it's interesting because I self-published my book, and the back cover, the publishing company, and they did a good job. They wrote the back cover, and it was this like, you too can have guaranteed success in these 8 Octagon ways. And I wrote them back, and I was like, no. And they were like, well, this is what you need to do to sell books. And I said, you haven't, like, I got kind of like feisty about it. And I'm like, you missed the whole point of my book. Like, I cannot undo everything I spent 200 pages trying to do with this back cover. And I need it to read differently, because that to me is so important. how do we do it in social media, Dave? I've got a podcast. You've got a podcast. I try to present encouraging things. And it's funny, I filmed a really vulnerable podcast. I don't think it was an overshare, but just a very real, like, hey, 20 seconds, here's something I want you all to know if you're following me. I didn't post it. And I actually sent it to my wife. I sent it to a couple trusted friends, and they're like, you absolutely need to post this. And I didn't. How do we do that in social media in a way that's authentic and real, but not overly vulnerable or oversharing? Do you have any ideas?
I think it goes back to purpose. So what's the purpose for sharing? Is the purpose to gain attention? Is the purpose to help somebody? Like, if our purpose is clean, then I say go for it. Like, if you're sharing something that is pretty personal to you, and the reason you're sharing is because there's other people that have gone through something and they don't have the tools, I don't know how that's negative. Are you going to get some blowback from some people? Who cares? Like, if your purpose is clear enough, I mean, you're teaching me this through your book. Like, if your purpose is clear enough, as long as your purpose is clear and it comes through with your social media, then go for it, I'd say.
Yeah.
I mean,
some
people are, don't want to talk at all about themselves or their family or whatever, and I respect that too, because they want a boundary between their professional life and their personal life. So it just depends on, what you're after.
I like that point, though. That's a really valid point. And yeah, maybe I'll post that video, even though it's 4 months old. Maybe I'll post it.
It's 4 months old only to you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth, brother.
Yeah.
It's 4 months old to you. It's brand new to me. So you post it today, it's brand new. I want to just close up in these last couple minutes, give you the stage to just share, like, what is your hope with launch? Like, what do you want to have happen because you put in the work to write a book?
I want, and I've had this experience since I published the book a few times. I want that college student or that 26-year-old or that 27-year-old trying to figure out their career. I want them to say, like, hey, that really helped me a lot and changed my perspective on a number of things. That's my first and foremost. The second thing I want, and this is my secret, is I wrote the book to a young person. I wrote the book for the young adult. I want their parents to read it and get the same takeaways. And I want a parent and a young person to speak the same language. Yeah. And so I touch on this in the book, but the book can be applicable. The concepts in the book can be applicable to any person at any age. It was directed at the young adult. And so I want other people to be able to pick it up, speak differently to their young adults, their college children, their mid-20s children, and see a different perspective. The growing up experience and the adulting experience is unprecedented right now. And it's about to get absolutely turned upside down again because of AI. Mm-hmm. And so we can't give old advice to young people in an absolutely new society. And there's a lot more nuance, there's a lot more complexity, and I see young people get more and more discouraged when we just throw things at them like, oh, just do what you love, just work hard, nothing matters. It's like, we'll work hard on this career that disappeared in 2 years because of AI. I mean, we were in college when the internet hit. I think I remember all my college professors being like, half the jobs half the jobs in the world don't even exist that will in 5 years. And I remember being like, yes. I mean, 5 years later, we have all this internet technology that we didn't have. And I was like, oh, they were right. I think we're going to experience something similar right now. And we can't just throw platitudes at these young people and expect them to be psyched. when there's just a lot more nuance and a lot more complexity to what we want them to learn and understand and how we can support them. So that's my hope, is that this book is that supporting thing. I love hearing, and you said it and I appreciate it, parents that are like, I read the book and bought a copy for each of my kids. I love hearing that, because to me it's like, hey, this book is a framework for giving you all the conversations and the concepts that you can all work off of together.
Yeah. Andrew, I appreciate you making the time. I appreciate you putting the work in to write the book. My kids will be reading this book, having conversations about it. So again, thanks for joining me on Authors at Drucker.
Thanks, Dave, for everything you're doing, man. Appreciate your friendship and our relationship and all that you do in the world.
All right. Take care, brother.
Thank you.
Next up on Authors at Drucker, I'll have the opportunity to interview Mark Anglesian, the author of Stakeholders, the intersection of human beings in the ecosystem of business. I hope you'll join us for both of these conversations, and look forward to interacting with you. Thanks again for joining us on Authors at Drucker.